By the time my shift ended that night, the cold had worked its way into my bones. The automatic doors of the supermarket slid open with a tired sigh, and that Midwestern wind came knifing in, sharp enough to make my eyes water. The parking lot was a sheet of dirty ice and tired headlights. I pulled my red Girotar vest tighter around my shoulders and told myself I didn't feel the ache in my knees. I could have retired for good 5 years ago. Between my pension and Social Security, I didn't need to stand by an automatic door saying hello to strangers for $8 an hour. But that job wasn't about money. It was about having somewhere to be that wasn't my own house. "Good night, Mr. Whittaker." The night manager called, already half buried in his phone. "Night, Josh," I said, tucking my name badge into my pocket. "Try not to freeze." The fluorescent light spilled out onto the slush, turning everything a sickly yellow. I stepped carefully, one hand on the rail, counting my steps like I always did. At 72, you learn to respect ice. You also learn to recognize fixtures in your world, the things that don't move. Ray was one of those things. He was there in his usual spot by the cart corral, slumped against the concrete post with his army green coat wrapped up to his chin. They'd tried to shoo him away a few times when he first started camping there, but the manager gave up once winter really set in. As long as he didn't bother customers, they pretended he wasn't there. Most people pretended that. "Evening, Ray," I said, like I always did. "Cold one." His beard moved just enough to show he'd heard me. Up close I could smell him. Stale cigarettes, old sweat, something sour underneath. But I'd long since stopped flinching. A man can get used to anything. I held out the paper cup of coffee in one hand and a crumpled $5 bill in the other. It was our ritual. I didn't know his last name. He didn't know mine. At least, I thought he didn't. But every evening I worked. He got something hot to drink and enough cash for a meal if he stretched it. "Here," I said. "Black, like you like it." I was already half turned toward my car when his hand shot out. It wasn't the slow, shaky movement I was used to. His fingers clamped around my wrist with a grip that made my old joints crack. For a second I didn't even process what was happening. I just stared down at that dirty, calloused hand on my skin. "Hey now," I murmured, trying to pull back. "Easy, Ray, you'll spill." He yanked me closer, hard enough that the coffee sloshed over the rim and splattered on the ice. His hood fell back a bit, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw his eyes clearly. They were not the cloudy, unfocused eyes of a man lost in his own head. They were sharp, sober, scared. "Don't go inside that house tonight, Mr. Whittaker." His voice wasn't the mumble I was used to either. It was low and fierce, like he was trying to keep it from traveling on the wind. For a heartbeat my mind stuck on that one word. "Mr. Whittaker." I blinked. "How do you know my name?" He tightened his grip. Pain shot up my arm. "Listen to me," he hissed, glancing around the parking lot. A woman pushing a cart looked right through us. "Don't go home. Not tonight. Not even to grab your toothbrush." My heart did a strange little skip. I tried to laugh it off, but it caught in my throat. "What are you talking about? What house?" I asked, though we both knew there was only one. "Your place," he said. "The blue one on Maple. With the cracked brick step. The one you always complain about but never fix." His mouth twisted into something that might have been a grim smile. "Don't go back there. Not after 6. Not tonight." The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing. The blue bungalow on Maple Street. My house. My only real asset in this world. Paid off 20 years ago with a bonus from the factory. The house where I'd raised my boy, where I'd buried my wife, where my widowed daughter-in-law and my grandson now lived with me, like I was some piece of antique furniture they hadn't figured out how to haul to the dump yet. I swallowed. "You've never been on my street," I said slowly. "How do you know where I live?" His gaze darted to the entrance doors, then to the security camera above us. He hunched a little, but his fingers never loosened. "I know more than they think. They talk around me because they think I'm invisible." His eyes drilled into mine. "Just trust me like I trusted you with those coffees, okay? Stay away from that house tonight. Or you won't wake up tomorrow." The wind gusted, snatching his words and firing them straight into my chest. "You're not making any sense," I whispered. "Who's they?" But it was like watching a switch flip. His shoulders caved in, his eyes went hazy, and his hand released my wrist so suddenly I almost fell backwards. He sank down against the concrete post, pulling his hood up, hands cradling the coffee like it was the only warm thing left on earth. A couple walked past with a complaining toddler. The kid pointed at us. "Why's that man sitting in the snow?" he asked. "Don't look," his mother snapped, steering him away. I stood there with my hands still half outstretched, my wrist throbbing, feeling like someone had punched a hole in my evening and let all the heat out. Ray slurped his coffee, eyes on the ground. If I hadn't felt his grip, heard that voice, I would have thought I imagined it. "Ray," I tried. He didn't look up, just muttered something about the cold. I backed away slowly, my work shoes slipping on the ice. The automatic doors opened and closed behind me with a soft whoosh. My old sedan sat 3 rows out, a dusting of frost already catching on the windshield. I unlocked it with numb fingers and slid behind the wheel, my breath puffing white in the dark. For a long moment I just sat there, my hands resting on the steering wheel, watching my own reflection in the rearview mirror. A thin old man with too much nose and tired eyes stared back. "This is crazy," I told him. "He's just some poor soul who's confused." But my wrist still tingled where he'd grabbed me, and my name still hung in the air between us. "Mr. Whitaker." I started the engine. The heater wheezed to life like it always did, blowing air that smelled faintly of dust and old French fries. I backed out, turned onto the main road, and pointed the car toward Maple like I did every night. The wipers scraped over the glass, squeaking in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Streetlights threw long yellow pools across the blacktop. I passed the strip mall, the shuttered diner, the darkened little church with the flickering cross. Ordinarily, this was the part of the evening when I braced myself for home. For Carla's sighs and Derek's eye rolls. For the television blaring shows I didn't choose in the living room I'd paid for. For the way Carla had started calling it, the Whitaker residence. When she answered the phone, like it was a business and not a home, like it was hers, I saw the word in my head now, printed on one of those cheap little welcome mats. My stomach twisted. Carla had been on me for weeks about my medications. Picking up my pill bottle, shaking it, counting under her breath. "You're supposed to take this one twice a day, Elliot," she'd said last night, dropping an extra tablet into my palm. "Doctor's orders." "I thought it was just once," I'd said. "Well, it's twice now." Her smile hadn't reached her eyes. "You want to be around to see your grandson get his life together, don't you?" Derek, slouched in the armchair, thumbs flying over his phone, had snorted. "He's got better odds of outliving me," he'd muttered. "Old man's practically immortal." Later, when she thought I wasn't listening, I'd heard them whispering in the kitchen about my life insurance, about making sure Dad's policy is in order before anything happens. I told myself it was just money stress talking. They had a right to worry, times were hard. But now Ray's words were floating up through those memories like oil on water. "Or you won't wake up tomorrow." I drove on autopilot, the wheel almost turning itself when Maple Street came up on the right. My blinker clicked. I slowed. The little blue street sign glowed faintly in my headlights. Then I saw, in my mind's eye, that cracked brick step at the front of my bungalow. I'd always meant to fix it. Marion used to nag me about it, back before the cancer took her. "Someone's going to trip and sue us," she'd say, hands on her hips, flour on her nose. I saw the narrow hallway, the worn carpet, the recliner that had molded to the shape of my body over 20 years. I saw myself in it, dozing after dinner, the extra pill dissolving in my stomach. The house quiet except for the hum of the furnace and the whisper of gas in the vents. That last part wasn't imagination. A week ago I'd been in my back room when I heard it. A faint hiss in the walls, like a snake with a sore throat. I'd gone down to the basement with my flashlight, only to find the old gas heater exactly as I'd left it 10 years ago, line capped, pilot off, everything still. Probably just the new unit cycling, Carla had said when I mentioned it. "You leave that stuff alone, okay? You fall on those stairs, we can't afford a hospital bill." This morning, as I backed out of the driveway to go to work, I'd noticed a white truck parked a few houses down. Gas company logo on the side. A man in a reflective vest leaning against the hood, staring at his phone. "I didn't call the gas company," I'd said, half to myself. Carla had been at the door with her coffee mug. They're just doing routine checks on the lines. She'd answered casually. City notice in the mail last week. Go on, you'll be late. At the time, I'd accepted it. People in uniforms make old men stop asking questions. But now, with my turn signal ticking and the streetlight drawing a yellow line across my dashboard, all those little details lined up in my head, neat as tools on a pegboard. Ray's warning. The hissing in the vents. The gas truck. The extra pill. The way Carla kept me away from the basement these days, clucking about my knees. My chest tightened, but not from my heart. From something colder. I took my hand off the steering wheel. The car rolled forward another few feet. Then I flicked off the blinker and jerked the wheel left instead, cutting across to the strip mall parking lot on the opposite corner. A horn blared. Headlights flashed as someone slammed on their brakes. I didn't care. I pulled into the empty end of the lot, killing the engine with fingers that shook. For a moment there was nothing but the ticking of cooling metal and the whoosh of the wind around the car. My breath sounded too loud in the confined space. Carla wouldn't. I said out loud, like saying it would make it true. Derek wouldn't. They're all I have left, aren't they? I dug my phone out of my coat pocket. It was an old thing, screen cracked across one corner from the time I dropped it in the driveway. My thumbs felt clumsy as I scrolled to my own number and hit call. The line rang twice, then Carla's voice filled the car, cheerful and smooth through the tiny speaker. You've reached the Whittaker residence, she chirped. Leave a message and we'll get back to you. The Whittaker residence, not Elliot and Carla's place. Not the house on Maple. Just some nameless residence she happened to be queen of. I hung up without leaving a message. My fingers were numb but not from the cold anymore. In my mind, I saw that extra pill again, white against my liver, spotted palm. I remembered the way she'd watched me raise the glass to my lips. I remembered tipping it back, letting the tablet slide to the back of my tongue, then, in the bathroom a few minutes later, spitting it into a tissue because it tasted bitter and I've learned to trust my tongue when my eyes can't read labels anymore. If he's wrong, I whispered, a laugh catching in my throat. I'm a fool. The alternative finished itself in my head, heavy as a judge's gavel. But if he's right, my own family wants me dead. The thought sat there between me and the steering wheel. Obscene and impossible and suddenly very, very believable. I started the car again, but I didn't point it toward Maple. I steered for the highway, for the cheap neon letters I knew hovered over a budget motel at the edge of town. The kind of place truckers used when the snow got too bad. The kind of place a man could pay cash and disappear for a night. The clerk barely looked at me. An old guy in a work vest handing over crumpled 20s wasn't interesting. He slid me a key on a plastic tag and went back to his radio show. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. The bedspread was a pattern of flowers that had never existed in nature. I sat on the edge of the mattress, my coat still on, my hat still in my hand, and stared at the wall until the buzzing in my ears calmed down enough that I could hear my own breathing. Then, slowly, I pulled my phone out again. There was an app buried in there I hadn't opened in a long time. A little blue icon from when I still believed I could stay ahead of the world by myself. Years ago, after a rash of break-ins on the block, I'd installed a cheap security camera in my basement aimed at my old toolbench and that shut-off heater. Just in case. I'd told Marion. I'd nearly forgotten about it. My thumb hovered over the icon. I tapped it. The screen went black. A little spinning circle appeared, chasing its own tail. Connecting to home network, it said. I watched that circle turn, feeling every second unwind inside my chest. Somewhere 5 miles away, in the blue house on Maple with the cracked brick step, something was happening. Either I was the world's most gullible old man for running to a motel because of a homeless stranger's warning, or I just sidestepped my own grave. The circle kept spinning. The little circle on my phone kept spinning, chasing its tail on that black screen. And in that cheap motel room there was nothing to do but wait and remember. It's funny what your mind reaches for when it's scared. Mine didn't go to hospitals or courtrooms or any of the places fear usually wanders. It went back 40 years to a pile of lumber and a patch of muddy ground on the edge of town. I could see it like it was yesterday. Me at 32, fresh off a Saturday overtime shift at the machine shop, standing in boots caked with clay, looking at a foundation that was finally poured. Marion beside me, her hair tucked up under a scarf, hands shoved into the pockets of my old jacket. The air had been cold then too, but it felt different. Back then, cold meant hard work and hot coffee and the satisfaction of watching something grow. "This house will keep us safe." She'd said, slipping her arm through mine. "You built it too solid to ever fall." I'd believed her. Every 2x4 I nailed, every shingle I hammered, I heard those words. Days at the plant, nights and Sundays on that little lot on Maple. I framed those walls myself. I ran the copper lines, set the tub, sanded the floors until my back screamed. When we finally moved in, just a mattress on the floor and 2 lawn chairs in the living room. It felt like stepping into a promise we'd made each other. We painted the kitchen yellow because Marion said yellow made even bad coffee taste better. She wasn't wrong. She took a pencil and started a growth chart on the doorway between the kitchen and the hall long before there was anyone to measure, just dates and little hopeful lines. Years later, when Derek was born, we finally had someone to stand under that pencil. I remember the first mark we made for him, his little blonde head pressed earnestly against the wood while I struggled to keep the tape measure straight. "Hold still, champ," I'd said, tongue between my teeth. "This is official business." He'd giggled and wiggled, and Marion had laughed and written, "Derek, age 3, in her neat script next to a line that barely cleared my knee. Back then he called me Papa Ill. He followed me like a shadow when they visited. He'd stand in the doorway of my basement workshop, eyes wide, while I shaped wood on the lathe. "Can I help?" he'd ask. I'd hand him a piece of sandpaper and a block of pine. "You can do quality control," I'd say. "Make sure it's smooth." He'd rub that wood like it held the secrets of the universe, sawdust in his hair, proud as if he'd built the whole house himself. Carla came into our lives when Derek was 10. I remember Marion watching her across the table that first Thanksgiving. The way you watch a stray dog that's wandered into your yard. Not unkindly, but cautious. Carla was all perfume and sharp edges even then, her laugh a little too loud, her stories full of little digs at other people. "She's not your kind of people," Marion said to me in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. "But if she makes Danny happy." Danny was our son, Derek's father. He'd fallen for Carla hard and fast, like only a quiet, good-hearted man can fall for trouble. Marion's mild unease never turned into open dislike. She accepted Carla because that's what you do when your boy brings someone home and says, "This is my future." I wasn't thrilled myself, but I trusted my son's judgment. Or maybe I just wanted to. Life rolled on. We had cookouts in the backyard. Carla bought salads, and complained about her job. Marion shook her head at the new throw pillows Carla gifted us every Christmas, but put them on the sofa anyway. Derek split his time between his mother's apartment and our little blue house, and every time he came through my front door, it felt like the rooms got lighter. Then came the accident at the plant. One wrong step, one faulty harness, and my boy was gone. Just like that. Carla wore black and wept and screamed and broke dishes in my kitchen. Derek went quiet in a way that scared me more than her noise. Marion stopped talking about the future. Cancer took her 2 years after that. By then the house felt too big even with all its memories. I'd catch Marion staring at the yellow walls of the kitchen like she was already half gone. At her funeral, I remember standing next to the casket, my hand on the smooth wood, feeling 90 instead of 70. People lined up to murmur the usual things. "She's in a better place. Time heals. Lies you tell the living so they don't break down in the aisle." Carla was there in a black dress a little too tight, mascara streaked just so. She clung to my arm afterward, guiding me to a folding chair in the church basement, like she was ushering a toddler. "You can't stay there alone, Dad," she said, her lips trembling just enough. "It's too much house for you. Let us move in, help you. Derek and I will look after you, I promise." Derek nodded, eyes red. "Yeah, Grandpa. We won't let you be lonely." I was raw and scared. The idea of coming home to empty rooms and Marion's pillow still dented on her side of the bed was too much. So I agreed. I told myself it would be temporary, just until the worst of the grief passed. 6 months later, the grief hadn't passed, but the rooms were a lot less empty. What had been our bedroom, the one with the big window overlooking the maple tree and the closet full of Marion's cardigans, was suddenly too big for an old man like me. Carla sat on the edge of the bed, patting my hand. "You'll be more comfortable in the back room," she said. "Closer to the bathroom, fewer stairs. We'll take this one. You know, so we can be near the front door if someone knocks late." She made it sound like a security plan. Maybe it was. I moved my clothes to the little room with the view of the neighbor's fence, and said nothing when her perfume started to replace Marion's soap in the bathroom. My checkbook disappeared next. One afternoon I opened the kitchen drawer where I always kept it and found nothing but take-out menace and spare keys. "Where's my checkbook?" I asked. Carla, chopping vegetables at the counter, didn't look up. "I've got it," she said. "Bills are confusing now, with everything online. Let me handle it. You don't need the headache." She started collecting my credit cards for safekeeping. 2. "Identity theft is everywhere," she said. "If you lose your wallet, we're all screwed." Not long after that, a big flat-screen television appeared on the wall, and a silver SUV materialized in the driveway where my old pickup used to sit. "Got a great deal," she said when I raised an eyebrow. "Year and sale. Practically giving them away. I wasn't born yesterday." I could have asked to see statements, but every time I opened my mouth, she'd sigh and say, "Do you not trust me, Elliot?" After everything. Derek changed in those years too. The boy who once begged to sand wood in my basement turned into a 26-year-old who never looked up from his phone. There was always some game on, some bet placed, some graph on a crypto app he was obsessing over. "You told that story already, Gramps," he'd say if I tried to reminisce. He'd roll his eyes so hard I thought they'd stick. "We get it. You built the house. Times are different now." My tools vanished from their hooks in the basement. For safety. Derek packed them in plastic tubs, slapped padlocks on, and stacked them in the garage. "You'll hurt yourself," he said. "Let me handle any repairs. Besides, I might sell some of this old stuff. It's just collecting dust." Everyone got so busy protecting me from everything that I woke up one day to find there wasn't anything left I was allowed to touch. That's when I applied for the greeter job at the supermarket. On paper it was for extra money, but really it was so I had a place where people still smiled when they saw me, even if they were being paid to be polite. Standing by that automatic door, handing out carts, nodding to tired mothers and harried workers, I felt more like a person than I did in my own living room. That's where I first saw Ray, hunched on that cart, coral concrete, coat zipped to his nose, hat pulled low. The first time, I walked past, heart pinching. The second time, I brought him a coffee, set it down without a word, and walked away. On the third, he shook his head. "I didn't ask," he muttered. I stopped. "I know," I said. "Take it anyway." My Marion would tan my hide if she knew I walked past a man in the cold without doing something. He looked up at that. For a second, I saw a man behind the whiskers, someone who remembered what it felt like to be called by name. "Switch yourself," he said, taking the cup. Over the months, that became our ritual. No long conversations. No sob stories. Just a nod. Evening. Ray. And a hot drink exchanged between two men the world had decided were past useful. I looked him in the eye when I handed him that cup because I knew what it felt like when no one did that anymore. Now, sitting on that motel bed with its lumpy mattress, and that lamp that flickered when the heater kicked on, I took in the stained wallpaper and mismatched curtains, and thought about the walls I'd once put up with my own hands. All that work so I could end up hiding from my own kin in a place like this. I tried to be fair. I told myself Carla and Derek were under pressures I didn't understand. Rents were sky high, jobs were unstable. Young people lived different now. Maybe I was just an old man misreading concern as control. Then I heard Carla's voice in my head, sharp as broken glass from just last week. "You know, Elliot, your life insurance is the only real safety net we have." She'd said it casually, stirring sauce at the stove, but her eyes had cut sideways at me, measuring. Before I could respond, Derek had chimed in from the couch without looking up from his phone. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Grandpa," he'd said. "House paid off, fat insurance. You're the richest poor guy I know. Don't go dying before my student loans are forgiven. Actually, maybe do." He'd laughed then, the way people laugh when they want you to think it's a joke but mean every word. I looked down at the phone in my hand. The little circle on the security app finally stuttered, then vanished. The screen went from black to a smear of grainy gray and green, shapes resolving into the outline of a basement I knew better than the back of my liver, spotted hand. My face tightened before I even understood what I was seeing. The picture cleared slowly, like someone wiping fog off a window. First it was just smudges of gray and green. Then lines, shadows. Then the familiar outline of my basement came into focus on the little screen in my hand. The rough concrete floor. The wooden support post with the knot that looked like an eye. The old workbench scarred by a lifetime of projects. In the far corner, like a rusted metal beast crouched in the dark, sat the old gas heater I'd sworn I'd put to sleep for good. I felt my mouth go dry. Nothing moved for a few seconds. Just the faint hum of the motel heater and the blood roaring in my ears. Then a shape appeared at the top of the frame. Feet first, then legs, then the hunched figure of my grandson, Derek, coming down those splintered basement stairs. He had a flashlight clenched in one hand, its beam cutting jittery circles on the walls. In the other was a red plastic can, the kind you buy to fill lawn mowers. He looked back over his shoulder twice before he hit the floor. Even in the murky night vision glow, I could see the sweat shining on his forehead. "Come on," he muttered more to himself than anything, stepping into view. He set the can down with a hollow thud. His hand shook so much the flashlight beam jittered over my old tool chest. From somewhere off-screen, above the camera's range, Carla's voice came down the stairs. The microphone on that cheap camera wasn't good, but her tone cut through the static sharp as a knife. "Just do what the man said, Derek. Open the line, don't overthink it."
See, man.
My mind flashed back to that gas company truck parked on the street this morning. The guy in the vest staring at his phone. I'd thought he was there for the neighbors. Derek turned halfway toward the sound, swallowing hard. "Mom, his voice cracked. "I'm not a killer. What if the old man wakes up? What if the neighbors smell something? What if?" Carla came into frame then, 2 steps down, her house shoes whispering on the wood. She wasn't dressed for bed. Jeans, cardigan, hair pulled back tight. In one hand she held a sheaf of papers, and tucked under her arm was the manual for that space heater she'd bought last winter. "He won't wake up," she said, and my stomach clenched. Because I knew what was coming next before she even opened her mouth. I crushed 2 of his sleeping tablets into that chamomile tonight. He barely made it to his chair. The lawyer said if he dies at home it pays double. I stared at the screen, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles had gone white. In my mind I tasted that bitterness again, the way the tea had curled on my tongue like poison. I saw myself in the bathroom, spitting it into the sink because something in me, some old, stubborn part, didn't trust that extra pill. If I'd swallowed it. Derek sagged against the support post, wiping his face with his sleeve. "I didn't sign up to kill my own grandfather, Mom," he said. I could hear the boy he'd once been fighting its way through the man he'd become. Carla snorted softly. "You signed up when you lost 80 grand of someone else's money," she shot back. She shook the papers in her hand. "They don't send emails like this for $20, Derek. They sent pictures of your car parked at work. They know where we live. You want your kneecaps or not?" She held up one of the pages close enough that the camera picked up part of a header phenol not to see, and a logo for some lone outfit I didn't recognize. My head spun. 80,000. My God. Derek bent to pick up the red can. He unscrewed the cap with trembling fingers. "Jazz leak, old man, sleeping pills." Carla went on as if she were reciting a recipe. "Insurance investigators seen it 100 times. That guy from the gas company said as long as the line's open and there's accelerant, it'll read like a tragic accident. We cry, we say he got confused trying to light the old unit. End of story." She nodded toward the heater. "Go. Turn the valve. Carefully." He said, "Not all the way at once or we'll smell it up here." I wanted to reach through the screen, grab that boy by the collar and shake him. Tell him to get out, to leave it capped, to run. But all I could do was watch as he edged toward the heater, the flashlight beam dancing over the dust. The camera angle was low, but I saw his hand reaching for the gas line I had capped myself a decade ago. The cap I'd tightened with my own wrench, satisfied that whatever else in life failed, that would hold. Now my grandson was putting his hand on it to undo everything. He fumbled the wrench, almost dropping it. The metal rang on the pipes, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times in that room, suddenly turned sinister. He braced himself, then gave the cap a twist. Even through the phone, I heard the soft, deadly hiss of gas escaping. Derek flinched, coughing, waving his hand in front of his face. "Smells like rotten eggs," he gagged. "Good," Carla said. She still hadn't descended all the way. She stood just above the camera's view, a general directing troops from the edge of the battlefield. "That means it's open. Now, pour a little line from there to the plug on that old shop light." She flicked the corner of the space heater manual with her thumb. "The guy said if there's a spark, it'll make sure things go the way they're supposed to." Derek unscrewed the red can. My whole body tensed as I watched a thin, dark stream trickle onto the concrete, arsing in a faint line from the base of the heater toward the power strip I used to plug in my light and drill. "Leave it," Carla ordered when he hesitated. "We'll smell something in an hour and come check. If it blows in the night, nobody will question it." Derek recapped the can with shaking hands. He picked up his flashlight, casting one last look around my basement like a man walking away from a grave he'd just dug, and followed his mother up the stairs. The camera kept rolling, recording the quiet, the invisible gas spreading through the shadows. I swallowed against the bile in my throat and tapped the corner of the screen. The app switched feeds with a little hiccup of static. The living room came into view next, the graininess flattening everything but not softening what I saw. Carla and Derek stood in the middle of my living room, my armchairs and coffee table looking like props around them. Carla sniffed theatrically, hand to her nose.
"You smell that?" she asked. Derek nodded, eyes too wide.
Yeah, good," she said. "We'll give it a little while, then we come down, pretend we just noticed. We'll say I tried to wake him, he wouldn't respond, house smelled like gas, we ran out and called." She walked over to my recliner, the one with my worn spot in the cushion, and patted the back of it like it was a dog. "By the time the fire trucks get here, there won't be much left," she added. Derek sank onto the sofa, rubbing his hands over his face. "What if the investigators look too closely?" he murmured. "What if they find the line?" Carla poured wine from a bottle on the coffee table into 2 glasses. "My glasses." She handed him one. "You think they'll believe your senile grandpa over a grieving widow and her hard-working son?" she asked. "He forgets half his sentences. He gets lost in the backyard. We'll tell them he'd been complaining of feeling cold, that he went down there himself. They'll pat us on the head and tell us how sorry they are." She sat crossing her legs, her eyes fixed on the dark television screen. "We can't afford to stay unless he goes peacefully," she added softly, almost to herself. "This is mercy, Derek. For all of us." They clinked glasses. On my motel nightstand, the little television glowed, muted. Cycling through local news. Car accidents, school closings, a council meeting. I watched the anchor's lips move and waited to see my house behind him, flames licking out of the windows. Nothing. Back on the phone, time stamps rolled forward. 11/2/11/19 Lozen 37. The living room feed showed my 2 would-be mourners watching some show, laughing at jokes that didn't land in my ears. Every now and then one of them would sniff dramatically, get up, pace to the hallway, then sit back down. Midnight came and went. The motel clock ticked louder, or maybe that was my imagination. At 12:14, the basement feed flickered as someone jostled the stairs above. Derek's figure stamped into view again, this time moving faster, panic in every line of his body. He was coughing harder now, wincing at his own headache. "Mom!" he shouted, voice bouncing off the cinderblock walls. "Mom, something's wrong." Carla's voice drifted down, muffled.
"What?"
"He's not there." Derek choked. "The recliner's empty. His bed's made. Truck's gone." Silence, heavy and electric, filled the basement. Even the hiss of the gas seemed to hold its breath. "He knew?" Carla snapped at last, coming halfway down so I could see the edge of her slipper, the hem of her jeans. "That old man knew." "Where did he go?" "Maybe he had chest pain and went to the ER," Derek babbled. "Maybe he went for a drive. I don't know. All I know is if he comes back and smells this, we're screwed." Carla cursed, a word Marion would have slapped my mouth for knowing. Paper rustled. "Shut it off," she ordered. "Now. Wipe the valve. Open some windows. Get that can out of there. We'll reset." "There are other ways." The camera watched them scramble. Derek twisted the valve closed, his hands leaving smears on the metal. The faint hiss died. They hauled the red can out of sight, their footsteps pounding overhead. In the motel room I sat very still. My hand had stopped shaking, I realized. It was too numb for that. On the screen my basement returned to quiet, but it wasn't the same quiet. It was like seeing a familiar face and realizing the eyes looking back at you belonged to a stranger. My daughter's husband died in a work accident. I'd opened my door to his widow so she wouldn't be alone. I'd told myself I was honoring my son, honoring Marion, doing what a decent man does. Now she wanted me alone in a coffin. I stared at that little rectangle of glass until my vision blurred. Not from age this time, but from something hot that refused to spill over onto my cheeks. All the small slights, the sighs, the rolled eyes, the missing checkbook, the extra pills, the gas truck. They snapped together in my mind with an awful kind of clarity, like the final piece of a puzzle you wish you'd never started. They had tried to kill me. Not in some rash heat of the moment way, but with planning, instructions, emails, consultations. They'd brought in a professional. They'd done the math. They'd failed tonight because a man everyone ignored grabbed my wrist and told me the truth. They tried once. I whispered into the stale motel air. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, low and steady. They'll try again. But now I'm awake. I backed out of the camera app with a swipe. My contacts list blinked up at me. 911 sat at the top, ready to go. My finger hovered over it, the skin of my thumb almost brushing the glass. If I called now, they'd send cars. There'd be questions, statements, denials. Carla would cry. Derek would shake. They'd talk about misunderstandings, about my memory, about stress. They'd say the camera was old, the audio unclear. A good lawyer could stretch reasonable doubt like taffy. I thought of Carla's voice, confident and cruel. You think they'll believe your senile grandpa over a grieving widow and her hard-working son? I pulled my hand back. I need something airtight. I told the empty room. Something even they can't talk their way around. The phone felt heavier in my palm, but for the first time that night, so did I. By the time I pulled onto Maple the next morning, the sky was that flat gray that makes it hard to tell what time it is. My eyes felt like sandpaper from a night of not really sleeping, just buzzing and jolting awake at every truck that rumbled past the motel. My little blue house came into view, neat as a picture with its peeling trim and sagging gutter. Smoke, no, not smoke, breath from the furnace, I told myself, puffed from the vent on the side. The front curtains were open, like always. I could see a slice of my own living room. I sat at the curb for a second, hands clamped on the wheel, and took a long breath. All right, I murmured. Time to play your part. As soon as my tires crunched into the driveway, the front door flew open. Carla came down the steps so fast I thought she'd twist an ankle on that cracked brick I never fixed. Her arms were already spread. Elliot, she cried, voice high and wobbly. Where have you been?
We were so worried.
We smelled gas last night and you were goney. She slammed into me before I could get both feet on the ground, wrapping me in a hug that was more like a headlock. Her perfume hit me first, too sweet this early, then the iron grip of her fingers digging into my back. I patted her shoulder a couple of times, more to pry her off than anything. Easy now, I croaked, letting my knees wobble a little. You're gonna knock me over. Behind her, Derek hovered on the top step, hands jammed in the pockets of his hoodie. He had dark circles under his eyes, his hair sticking up like he'd been running his hands through it all night. You scared the hell out of us, Grandpa, he said, trying for indignation and landing closer to rehearsal. The old heater down there must have blown a valve or something. I, heroically shut it off. He gave me a weak grin, like a little boy fishing for praise for cleaning his room. All I could see was his face in that green, tinted camera glow lit by the flashlight as he turned the wrench on my gas line. Gas, I repeated, blinking. I let my gaze drift past them, like I was trying to catch up with the conversation. Heater. I felt funny in my chest yesterday. Little tight, so I drove to urgent care. Must have fallen asleep in the waiting room. I rubbed my sternum for effect. Didn't mean to worry you. Carla pulled back enough to look at my face, her hands still on my shoulders like she was checking my pupils. You drove yourself? She scolded. In that state, you disappearing like that could have killed all of us with stress. Do you want that on your conscience? I almost laughed. Killed all of us. Interesting turn of phrase. I'm sorry. I murmured, ducking my head. Didn't think. That's right, she snapped, then smoothed her voice. You weren't thinking. That's the problem. You can't just wander off at night. You need supervision, Elliot. It's not safe. She linked her arm through mine, steering me toward the door like a nurse escorting a fragile patient. Derek stepped aside to let us pass. His eyes slid away from mine. Inside, the house felt off. Too bright for one. Every blind was up, every curtain drawn back, letting in the weak winter light. The air had that sharp, artificial citrus smell of spray cleaner sitting uneasily over something else. Faint, but there the sour tang of burned dust and a ghost of rotten eggs. The windows in the living room were cracked an inch, letting in threads of cold. Had to air it out, Carla said, seeing my nose twitch. It was awful last night. Whole place reeked. I glanced toward the hallway, picturing Derek down there shutting off the valve, Carla barking orders. On the little table by the phone, a stack of mail teetered under a glossy magazine. A corner of an envelope stuck out, red letters shouting past DUE in the sliver I could see. Someone had started to crumple it and then thought better. While Carla fussed with my coat buttons, I let my hand drift over, sliding the envelope free with the same fingers that used to fish screws out of tight engine blocks. I palmed it, stuffed it into my vest pocket. Sit, Carla ordered. You look exhausted. I'll get you some breakfast. Did they give you anything at the clinic? New meds. She shepherded me into my own chair and pressed me down like I weighed nothing. Derek flopped onto the couch, rubbing his temples. We're drowning here, Grandpa, he muttered, staring at the floor. And you're off napping in waiting rooms. Carla shot him a look. He shut his mouth with a click. In the kitchen I heard cupboards banging, the clatter of dishes. A minute later she appeared with a plate of toast and scrambled eggs and a glass of orange juice, which she set down in front of me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Eat, she said. And then take your pills. Double dose, remember. Doctor said if your heart feels funny, we up it. She set the orange pharmacy bottle on the table, popped the cap, shook out 2 of the little white tablets into her palm. They looked harmless like Brith mints. Here, she chirped. Bottoms up. I picked them up between thumb and forefinger, studying them like I couldn't quite remember what to do. Then I popped them into my mouth, raised the juice, and tipped it back. I felt the pills hit my tongue, but I didn't swallow. I let the juice wash around them, cheeks bulging a little. There you go, she said approvingly. See, teamwork. She turned back toward the kitchen. As soon as her back was fully turned, I leaned to the side, coughed delicately into my napkin, and spit the tablets into the folds. I tucked the soggy bundle into the pocket of my robe. Every kind gesture now had a blade hidden in it. Every soft hand on my arm was someone checking the ripeness of fruit before squeezing. After breakfast, Derek piped up, shifting in his seat. We should talk about getting you one of those medical alert bracelets, Grandpa. You know, the ones with GPS. So if you wander off again, we can find you. For your safety. For my safety, I repeated mildly. And to keep tabs on me. He frowned. It's not like that. We need to know where you are. In case something happens. Something almost happened last night, I thought. And the only reason it didn't is because I wasn't where you thought. Aloud I said, maybe. We'll see. Carla's phone started buzzing on the counter. She snatched it up, glancing at the screen, and walked into the hall, voice dropping. I told you, we're working on it. I heard her hiss. Friday is the deadline, I know that. They're serious, you've made that very clear. I said we have it handled. A pause. My hearing's not what it used to be, but I could make out enough. Yes, of course you'll get your money. This week. Just don't call this number again. She came back in plastering on a smile. Telemarketers, she said breezily. They never give up. I chewed a bite of toast that tasted like cardboard and thought, neither do sharks. When she took our plates to the sink, I slipped out of my chair with a little groan for show. Gonna lie down, I told her. Hospital chairs aren't built for sleeping. Don't you dare go down to that basement, she called after me. You hear? It's not safe. We need a professional to look at that heater. I won't. I lied. I went down the hall to my little back room, shut the door, and counted to 30. Then I opened the closet and pushed aside Marion's old winter coats, the ones Carla hadn't gotten around to donating yet. Behind them, at ankle level, was the small wall safe we'd bolted between the studs 20 years ago. Back when people still kept papers instead of passwords. I knelt down, my knees barking in protest, and ran my fingers over the metal. There were fresh scratches around the dial I hadn't put there. Tiny arcs where something harder than my skin had scraped away the paint. The knob sat a hair off center, like someone had pried at it. My jaw clenched. I spun the combination by muscle memory. Right, left, right. Marion's birthday numbers lined up like always. The handle turned. Inside, the familiar folders waited. Neat because Marion had been neat about these things. The first thing I reached for was the certificate for her little savings bond, the one she'd gotten from her aunt. We used to joke that it was our runaway to the beach fund. The folder was there, but when I opened it, the bond was gone. In its place was a stamped line that said Rediamond and a date from 8 months back. Beneath it lay my life insurance policy. I pulled it out, flipping to the beneficiary page. When Marion was alive, we designated a children's charity to receive whatever was left after funeral costs. We'd changed it after our son died, split between Derek's college fund and that charity. Now the page looked different. Newer paper, the logo updated. In careful letters, the primary beneficiary read Dark ALN We Are. Contingent Carla Mochakar. Below that, in a shaky scrawl meant to mimic an old man's hand, was my name, Elliot J. Whittaker. Except I've been signing things the same way since I was 12, and my E has never looped over like that. I stared at that jagged forgery for a long time, breathing through my nose. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. It was like someone had snapped something inside me, and instead of breaking, it had frozen solid. They'd already cashed out my wife's little dream. They'd put their names on my death. The folder where the house deed should have been was thin when I pulled it out. The original document was missing. In its place were copies of a home equity line of credit and a thick packet from some reverse mortgage outfit, both in my name. Both with a contact email I didn't recognize but that had Carla's maiden name buried in it. They'd already spent my future. I heard myself say under my breath, now they want my blood to pay the interest. I slid my phone out of my pocket, thumbed the camera on, and started taking pictures. Every page, every forged signature, every stamp. The shutter sound was muted, but I winced each time like it might carry through the floor. When I was done, I put everything back exactly the way I'd found it. Folders in the same order. Safe door swung shut, dial spun twice. Coats back on their hangers, their familiar powdery scent wrapping the metal box in ghost arms. That evening, after my shift at the store, because yes, I still went, habit is a stubborn thing, I came home to find Carla at the dining table with a neat stack of papers in front of her. Derek sat opposite, tapping a pen against the wood. The television was off for once. That alone put me on edge. There you are, Carla said brightly. Perfect timing. Sit, Elliot. We need to go over a few things before our little trip next week. She pushed a chair out with her foot. I eased into it, feigning the stiffness that came so naturally these days. What trip? I asked. To visit Derek's friend, she said vaguely. Out of state. We talked about it, remember? Anyway, before we travel, it's just smart to have certain safeguards in place. Nothing scary. She slid the first document toward me. This one just says we can speak to your doctors if something happens. Medical power of attorney. Standard stuff. The next. This is so we can handle bills if you're, incapacitated. Bank convenience form. Saves you the hassle. I looked down. The paragraphs swam in front of my eyes. I caught phrases like Dranit fel el reynacstoal. Linda from over on Setter signed the same thing for her kids, Carla added. We're only trying to help. Unless you don't trust us. Her smile tightened, daring me to say the wrong thing. Derek wouldn't meet my gaze. He traced a crack in the varnish with his thumbnail. I'm not sure, I said, letting my voice wobble. I squinted at the paper, bringing it too close to my face. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Legal stuff confuses me. Maybe after my shift tomorrow, when I'm fresh. I'm too tired tonight. She huffed, just a little, then caught herself. Of course, she said through her teeth. Whatever makes you comfortable. We just thought you'd want to make things easier. On everyone. We're drowning here, Grandpa. Derek muttered again. You have more than you need. I pushed the papers back a fraction of an inch. I thought I'd given you enough, I said softly, mostly to myself. Turns out, enough doesn't exist when greed starts counting. Carla's head snapped up. What was that?
Nothing.
I said quickly. Just tired. That night, in my small back room, I shut the door and locked it, something I hadn't done in years. I spread the crumpled loan statement I'd lifted from the phone table on my bedspread. Red numbers screamed amounts that made my stomach drop. Next to it, on my phone screen, the photos of the forged signatures and loan packets glowed back at me. I didn't understand every term, every clause, but I understood one thing. I was the one holding up a house they'd already started to sell piece by piece. I need someone who actually knows what they're looking at, I whispered. As I lay back, staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling, my mind drifted to Ray, to the way his voice had changed behind the supermarket, the words he'd used the night he grabbed my arm, line, vent, backdraft. Not things you pick up panhandling for coffee. Maybe I wasn't the only invisible old man in this town with more to him than people saw. The next afternoon, I waited until the lunch rush died down before I took my break. The manager grumbled when I told him I needed the full 15 minutes this time. But I just nodded and stepped out the side door into the narrow alley that ran behind the supermarket. The cold hit me like it always did, but there was a thin, watery sun peeking between the buildings now. Trash bins lined the wall, lids askew, the air carrying the twin scents of old produce and fryer grease. Ray was there, like he always was, hunkered on an upturned milk crate behind the recycling bins. In daylight he looked even worse, face more creased, beard more matted. But his eyes flicked up as soon as the door shut behind me. Break time already, Mr. Whitaker, he mumbled, hunching deeper into his coat. I walked over and sat on the crate opposite him, setting 2 paper cups on the upturned pallet between us. I didn't reach for my wallet this time. Brought coffee, I said. Black. He eyed the cups, then me. You usually slip cash under the cup, he said. You forget? I didn't forget, I answered. I just came for answers first. For a second something like amusement flickered across his face, then it dissolved into the familiar vacant stare. He scratched at his beard and muttered, "Answers are expensive." In that slurred voice most people heard from him. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. You knew about my house, I said quietly. You knew about the gas. You knew my name, my street, the crack in my front step. You said they were talking like you weren't there. Who are you really, Ray? Wind tugged at the edge of his hood. He didn't answer right away. His fingers traced the rim of the coffee lid, round and round. Then he let out a sigh that came from somewhere deep, like air escaping a long, deflated tire. I was hoping you wouldn't ask, he muttered. Too late, I said. I watched them down there. I watched my grandson put a wrench on that line. I heard my daughter-in-law talk about my death like she was reading a grocery list. You're the only reason I wasn't in that recliner last night. I think that earns me the truth. He sat up slowly. The slouch straightened a fraction, enough that I could see the shape of the man underneath all that resignation. When he spoke again, the wobble was gone from his voice. I used to get paid to spot people like your daughter-in-law, he said. Now I sleep behind dumpsters and listen to them plot in alleys. I frowned. Paid to spot them how? Claims investigator, he said. Midwest Mutual. 25 years. House fires, car wrecks, accidental drownings. If a payout looked funny, they sent me. I could smell a staged accident from a mile away. He took the lid off his coffee, blew on it, and took a careful sip. Then my brother's warehouse burned down, he went on. Right after he took out a big policy. They assigned me the case. His mouth twisted. I knew every trick in the book, and I still missed the one in front of me. Cleared the claim. 3 months later, we found out he and his partner set the whole thing up to pay off gambling debts. They skipped town with the money. My parents lost their house co-signed on his loans. My marriage didn't survive the fallout. I started drinking to drown the shame. Next thing I knew, my desk was empty and my pension was gone. He tapped his temple. But you don't forget the work, he said. Even when you're pushing a cart full of cans instead of a briefcase. I sat back, absorbing that. It fit, in a grim kind of way, the way he'd said line and vent, the precision in his warning. So how do you know about Carla and Derek? I asked. You just randomly chose my family to latch onto, He shook his head. 3 days ago. It was too cold to sleep under the overpass, he said. I curled up in that little nook between the payday loan place and the back of your bank. Warmer there, exhaust from the vents. I was reading an old newspaper someone tossed when they came stomping out the side door of the loan place. Your boy and that woman. I pictured it. The neon open sign, the dingy alley. They weren't whispering, Ray said. They didn't see me. They never do. To them, I'm just part of the trash. She was waving a paper in his face, saying 60 grand by Friday or they start taking fingers. He kept saying he could win it back, that his bets would come through. She called him an idiot and said, You've got a policy standing right in front of you. The house is clear. One good accident and we're free. He reached into his coat then, deeper than I thought that ratty thing went, and pulled out a small, beat-up flip phone held together with duct tape. He set it on the pallet between us like it was made of glass. Old habits, he murmured. Even when I was sleeping under desks, I recorded everything. I heard their tone, started that thing up. He flipped it open with a practiced flick, thumb pressing a side button. A tinny beep sounded, then static gave way to voices warped by distance but unmistakable. Half senile, won't notice one extra pill. Carla's voice crackled through sharp as ever. He's so proud he capped that old heater himself. All we have to do is uncork it, let physics and pharmaceuticals do the rest. Derek's voice followed, higher, shaking. This is crazy, Mom. What if he doesn't? What if? The recording cut there. Ray snapped the phone shut. I followed the kid's car another day, he said. Bored, curious. I watched where he parked. Saw the blue bungalow, the cracked brick. A couple days later, I saw you come out that same front door to get your mail. Recognized your face from the store. He met my eyes. You're the only one who looks me in the eye, man, he said quietly. Brings coffee, not just pity. I wasn't about to let them turn you into another statistic in a report I used to write. I swallowed hard. Gratitude and fury and a sick kind of validation all crashed together inside my chest. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. I admitted. Old, suspicious. But I saw them. They opened the line. They poured the gas. My hand fumbled for my phone. I unlocked it, scrolled to the album I'd made last night, and slid the device across to him. Look, I said. He wiped a thumb on his coat before he touched the screen, as if he could smudge something important. He swiped through the photos. Marion's redeemed certificate, the changed beneficiary page, the loan packets, the reverse mortgage inquiry with Carla's email. His jaw tightened the further he went. This is textbook motive, he muttered. You're sitting on a paid-off property and a decent policy. They're leveraged to the hilt, counting on your death to reset the board. Classic debt spiral thinking. Burn it all down, cash the check. Start over. So we go to the police, I said. Show them the video from my basement. You're recording these papers. Ray shook his head slowly. Don't get me wrong, he said. Eventually, yes. But right now? You walk in there with this. They'll see a family squabble over money. An old man who might be confused. A couple of recordings with questionable chain of custody from a homeless drunk. They'll tell you to see a lawyer and maybe adult protective services. They won't put detectives on attempted murder without something they can hang a whole case on. What about the insurance company? I asked bitterly. Surely they don't want to pay out on a murder. They don't do pre-crime, he said. Trust me. They'll investigate after you're dead, when your house is a blackened shell and your body's in a bag. Might even figure it out, might even deny the claim. Fat lot of good that does you. He took another careful sip of coffee, eyes never leaving mine. You need a shark, he said. A lawyer who hates bullies. Someone who can lock your assets down and tell you exactly how bad they've already fleeced you. And, he added, tapping the flip phone, we need clean, time-stamped evidence of them trying to push you into signing more control over, or planning another accident. Not just them talking in alleys, but right there in your house, where a jury can picture it. A name came to me then unbidden. Linda Park. Mid-40s now, she'd been a fresh-faced associate when I'd helped her father shore up his porch 20 years back. She'd given me a business card then with a shy smile, said, If you ever need a lawyer, Mr. Whittaker, look me up. Last year, I'd heard through the neighbor grapevine that she'd helped old Mrs. Kendricks get a restraining order against her own son for draining her accounts. I might know someone, I said slowly. Office over on Pine. She helped my neighbor once. Likes a fight. Ray nodded like that was the first good news he'd heard all winter. Then let's go while you're on break, he said, pushing himself up with a grunt. I clean up okay if I stand up straight and don't smell too bad. I looked at his coat. He caught my glance and shrugged. Been meaning to use that church shower downtown, he said. Wes, now I've got a reason. He patted his few belongings. But for a consult, she can take me as is. Evidence outweighs Cologne. An hour later, after I faked a stomachache to leave my shift early, we sat in a warm, wood-paneled office that smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. Diplomas lined the wall behind the desk. The woman sitting there had more gray at her temples than I remembered, but her eyes were just as sharp. Monsieur Whitaker, she said, coming around to shake my hand. It's been a while. You did my dad's porch, right? How can I help you? I put the stack of copied documents on her desk. Ray set his little flip phone down beside them like offering up a relic. For the next 20 minutes, I talked more than I had in months. I told her about the extra pills, the gas truck, the hidden camera, the forged forms, the motel. Ray filled in the alley conversation, played her the recording. At first she listened with the polite detachment of a professional. I saw her expression change when she reached the beneficiary page, though. Her jaw clenched when the words, 60 grand by Friday or they start taking fingers, came out of Ray's phone. She sat back hard in her chair. They've already stolen your paperwork and tried once to kill you, she said when we finally ran out of words. Mr. Whitaker, this isn't paranoia, it's survival. So what do we do? I asked. Besides wait for them to take another run at me. What, tighten the fence, she said briskly. First, we revoke any financial or medical powers of attorney they might have tricked you into signing. Then we draft a new will that reflects your wishes and makes it very clear that any beneficiary who harms you is cut out. Then we move as much of your liquid assets as possible into a trust under my firm's oversight, with you as the primary beneficiary. She flipped through the loan packets, her mouth compressing further. I can also send letters to these lenders demanding copies of any authorizations, she added. If they used forged signatures, that's another nail in their coffin. But as for the homicide angle, she glanced at Ray's phone, then at me. We need more. Clean recordings of them discussing plans in your home. Evidence of them trying to coerce you into signing over control. We let them think the gravy train is still on track, maybe even grease the wheels a bit, and see how far they're willing to go. Grease the wheels how? I asked warily. She smiled, thin and humorless. People this greedy, she said. They're never satisfied with what they already have. If, say, an unexpected larger inheritance was about to fall into your lap, I suspect they'd show us just how desperate they really are to get their hands on it. Ray's eyes gleamed. We dangle a bigger carrot, he said. Watch them trample each other to grab it. Linda nodded. We secure your money and ownership first, she said. Then we let them expose themselves trying to get at what they think is still there. I sat there between a fallen investigator and an angry lawyer, two strangers who believed me more than my own family ever had. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope, hard, cold, and sharp, like a new tool in my hand. Linda didn't waste time. By the next morning, her conference table was covered in more paper than my kitchen had seen in years. Some of it was real and heavy. The trust documents, the revocations of power of attorney, the new will she'd drafted overnight. And one piece, right on top, looked just as official: cream, colored letterhead, embossed seal of some law firm in Jefferson City, Missouri, that as far as I knew had never existed until she opened her laptop. She said, sliding it toward me. Your late second cousin on your mama's side, once removed, owned some scrubland nobody cared about until a gas company found something under it. Died without direct heirs. Left it all to you out of nostalgia. I picked up the letter. The words swam a little, but even I could see the number printed halfway down. 1.5 million. I read, my voice coming out thin. That's a lot of nostalgia. Linda's mouth twitched. Big enough to make them greedy, she said. But not so big it sounds like fiction. Now this paragraph. She leaned over and tapped a section. Is important. It says you have to appear in person next Wednesday in Missouri to sign. And here. Her finger slid further down. If you die before the documents are executed, the assets revert to a charity your fictional cousin supported. No benefit to your current family. So they need me alive until I sign, I said slowly. Exactly, she said. You become more valuable breathing than burned. She straightened, gathering another stack of forms. In the meantime, she went on, we move your real money. This, she held up a slim folder, is your new trust. Revocable while you're alive so you keep control, but with me as administrator to make sure nothing gets siphoned off without your knowledge. Upon your death, it passes to the beneficiaries you chose. Those charities your cousin in Ohio. Not Carla and Derek. I've already drafted and filed notices revoking any old financial or medical powers they might have. Legally, they have no right to sign a vending machine contract for you, let alone a mortgage. I held the pen she offered, feeling the weight of it. Signing those pages felt different from the ones Carla slid under my nose. Those had come with sighs and guilt, and the sense I was being hustled. This came with clear eyes and the kind of anger that gets work done. By the time I scratched my name on the last line, a knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying in my chest loosened a notch. Doan, Linda said, stacking the papers into neat piles. They don't know it yet, but everything they thought they'd already stolen is locked up where they can't touch it. Ray had been quiet, sitting in the corner in a thrift store shirt Linda's assistant had found for him, beard trimmed, hair pulled back. He looked less like a vagrant and more like, well, like a man who used to wear a badge in his wallet instead of a bus transfer. He cleared his throat. What about ears in the house? He asked. You said we need them talking on tape in his living room? Not just in some alley. Linda nodded. As long as it's in common areas and you're a party to some of the conversations, there's no expectation of privacy under state law, she said. Kitchen? Dining room? We're fine. Not bedrooms, not bathrooms. Ray grinned feral. I know a guy, he said. Owes me a favor from the old days. Does legit security installs for businesses now, but he's not above a side job. Little matchbox mics wireless. You'll never notice them, but they'll hear everything. Which is how, 2 days later, I found myself letting a man in a blue jumpsuit into my kitchen while Carla fretted about a dripping faucet. I called a plumber. I told her, holding up the card Linda had handed me. Sink's been making that noise. It's not that bad, she sniffed. But she was already up to her elbows in some online recipe, and the guy's toolbox looked respectable, so she waved him in. Leak's probably in the upstairs line, he said after a minute of banging around under the sink. Mind if I check the bathroom? First door on the left, she said, barely glancing up. He trudged upstairs, boots heavy on the steps. I knew from the little nod he'd given me at the door that every stomp was calculated. Every door creak a cover for something much smaller and quieter, being stuck under the dining table, behind the clock in the kitchen. By the time he came back down and scribbled an invoice, the house was wired. That evening I shuffled into the living room with the letter from Jefferson and Cole, attorneys at law, in my hand, trying to look more confused than usual. Carla was sprawled on the couch, laptop balanced on her knees. Derek sat in the armchair, phone in both hands, fingers flying. This came in the mail, I said, holding the envelope up. Must have got mixed in with the coupons. Some cousin I barely knew died. Says there's well. I must be reading it wrong. I handed it to Carla. She took it with the impatience of someone expecting junk, eyes flicking down the page, and then freezing. 1.5 million, she whispered. Her voice hitched. Derek, do you know what that means? We're saved. Derek leaned over, peering at the letter. I watched his whole body deflate, like someone had punched a hole in his fear and let it leak out. Holy. He caught himself, glancing at me. That's wow. I shrugged, letting my shoulders sag. I'm too old to go all the way to Missouri, I said. It's probably a mistake anyway. Some other wet-taker. They should give it to somebody who'll use it. I've got a roof over my head. That's enough. Carla's head snapped up. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Panic flared naked in her eyes. No, she blurted. No, Elliot. You can't just throw away money like that. Think of us. Think of Derek. Think of how this could take care of you in your old age. Private nurses, better doctors, not having to worry about anything. Her hand fluttered uselessly toward the letter. Derek swallowed, eyes darting between us. We could drive you, he said. Make it a road trip. I've got those vacation days they're always bugging me to use. We go down, you sign, we come back. Easy. Road trip? I repeated like the words tasted strange. My back doesn't like long drives anymore. Son. He gave a nervous laugh. It'll be fun, he said. We'll take turns. Me and Mom. We'll look after you the whole way. Funny? I said, forcing a chuckle. How my value went up overnight. Carla bristled. That's not fair, she snapped. Then she smoothed her tone. We're thinking big picture, Elliot, for all of us. Speaking of which, she tapped the letter. There is the matter of that little loan thing you overheard, remember? You mentioned it. That was nothing. Just a credit card hiccup. If we show them this letter, they'll extend us. We just need you healthy until you sign. After that, we can all breathe. In the tiny device stuck beneath the table, her words turned into ones and zeros, saving themselves for later. Healthy, I echoed. She reached over, squeezed my shoulder. So no more disappearing acts. She cooed. No more driving yourself to clinics without telling us. We'll handle all of that. You just focus on resting and eating well. I'll make your favorites. We want you in top shape for Missouri. And just like that, I went from burden to investment. Over the next 2 days, the house turned into a strange, bitter version of what it might have been if love had been the reason they were there and not desperation. Carla turned into a one-woman nursing staff. She cooked roasts and stews, baked pies, bought multivitamins at the drugstore. Sit, Elliot. She'd say if I stood up, let me get that. We don't want you slipping. Here, take this blanket. Are you warm enough? Need more pillows? Derek suddenly had time. He skipped shifts, claiming he wasn't feeling well, and hovered in doorways, offering to drive me anywhere I needed to go. A luxury he'd never afforded me before. You sure you don't want company at the store? He'd ask. You know, just in case. They walked on either side of me on the porch steps, hands hovering like I was made of blown glass. At night, I could hear them whispering in the hallway outside my door, their voices low and urgent. Thanks to Ray's friend and those little black boxes, I didn't have to press my ear to the wall like some child. Ray had given me a tiny earbud that fit snug in my ear when I was alone. When I tapped it on, the murmur of the kitchen or living room came through clear as if I sat at the table. One night, I listened to the clink of dishes and the rustle of pages while Carla loaded the dishwasher. Derek's voice floated in first. So we get the money, he said. Then what? We just go back to how things were. Grandpa in the back room, us tiptoeing around his feelings. Carla made a disgusted sound. As soon as that check clears, he's going to a care home, she said. I am not changing bedpans for a millionaire. We find a place in the next county, the kind that takes Medicaid and doesn't ask questions. We tell everyone his dementia got worse. End of story. There was a pause. I could hear running water, the scrape of a plate. Derek said slowly. Or we let nature take its course with a little help. Old guy like him heart's a ticking time bomb. One shock. One extra pill, we could save the nursing home fees. She didn't snap at him for that. That hurt more than his suggestion. Too risky right after the Missouri trip, she mused, as if they were discussing a vacation itinerary. Investigators might sniff around if a man drops dead a week after cashing in on a big inheritance. We wait a few months. Either we ease him into a facility. Her voice dropped. Or he has one last peaceful night at home with a very strong tea. Old men die in their sleep all the time. My hand tightened around the earbud until the plastic creaked. In Linda's office. In the meantime, real things were happening. She finalized the sale of a little strip of land I'd forgotten I even owned. Some worthless patch I'd inherited from a cousin years back. The buyer wired the money straight into the trust. Every loose dollar I had was tied down. Carla's fishing net, thrown over my accounts, came up with nothing but air now. Back in my narrow bed, listening to my would-be caretakers plan my disposal, I stared at the ceiling until the cracks above me blurred. They thought they had options. Facility or poison. Dump me or dose me. To them, my future was a flowchart of inconvenience. I won't be here for either, I said softly into the dark. The words didn't feel like a wish. They felt like a promise. If you've ever poured your sweat into a place, you know it doesn't feel like lines on a deed. It feels like bone. That's what I was thinking as I sat in Linda's office again, staring at the folder she'd just placed in front of me. The top page had my address typed in neat black letters, 412 Maple Street. Beneath that, the name of an LLC I didn't recognize as the buyer. The number on the next line was less than what the place might fetch in a bidding war, but more than enough to make a man my age comfortable. "You're sure about this?" Linda asked, pen resting between her fingers. "My client can wire funds and close within 48 hours. As is condition. No inspections, no repairs. It's not top dollar, but it's fast and clean." I looked past her shoulder at the window. From her 10th floor office you could see the river, thin and gray, cutting through the town like a scar. Somewhere beyond those rows of roofs was my little blue bungalow, the maple tree in the front yard bare and bony. In my head, I saw Marion on the front steps, garden gloves on, dirt on her cheek as she scolded me for not fixing that cracked brick. I heard Derek's childhood laughter as he ran through the sprinkler, the dog chasing him. I saw myself in the basement, shaping wood while the furnace hummed, the house breathing slow and steady around us. "Feels like cutting off my own arm," I admitted. Ray, leaning against the wall by the bookshelf, pushed off and came to stand beside me. He rested his hand on the back of my chair. "A house is wood and drywall ill," he said quietly. "You can rebuild that anywhere. You can't rebuild a soul poisoned by greed. That place stopped being your home the moment they decided to turn it into your coffin." He wasn't wrong. The image of Carla standing at the top of the basement stairs flashed in my mind, that space heater manual in her hand, Derek bending over my gas line. My fingers tightened on the pen until my knuckles went white. "Once this is signed," Linda said, her voice steady, "they can't touch your money, not even if they drag you to court and spin sob stories in front of a judge. The house will belong to the LLC. Your assets are wrapped in the trust. Legally, you are not their golden goose anymore." I took a breath that felt like stepping off a ledge and put pen to paper. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name where the stickers told me to sign, each line a small act of amputation and mercy rolled into one. When I was done, Linda gathered the pages, clipped them, and set them in a separate pile. "I'll send this to my client now," she said. "He's ready. Funds should hit the trust account by tomorrow. The recording office will process the deed transfer within 24 hours. I've already spoken to the sheriff's department. Once the closing is official, if your daughter-in-law and grandson don't leave voluntarily, we can request a writ of possession. Sheriff's deputies will escort them out if it comes to that." The thought of men in uniforms walking Carla and Derek down my front steps with boxes in their arms stirred something complicated in me. Satisfaction, yes. But grief too, because they weren't strangers. They were the last of my blood, and somehow that still meant something even after everything. Linda slid another, thinner folder across the desk. "Your updated will," she said. "And the trust amendments." I flipped it open. The names on the pages were different now. The children's hospital Marion had donated to every Christmas. The veterans' shelter on 3rd where I'd dropped off old coats. A cousin in Ohio I hadn't seen in years but who'd called me after Marion died just to let me cry into the phone. No Carla. No Derek. Not even a token dollar. "It feels wrong," I admitted, my voice low. "Cutting family out." Ray snorted softly. "Family cut themselves out when they tried to light you up like a bonfire," he said. "All you're doing is catching up." I thought of Derek, standing in my basement with that gas can. Of Carla's voice, cool and practical. "We all know where we live, and none of us can afford to stay unless he goes peacefully." I signed. When the last signature dried, it felt like a line had been drawn between us that couldn't be crossed again. "Now we let them come to you," Linda said. Smile, nod, act confused. "When Carla brings out her stack of simple forms at dinner, we'll be ready?" "Dinner?" I asked. She smiled thin. "She called my office this morning," Linda said. "Hi, Miss Park, Carla Whitaker here. We've never met but Elliot has your card on the fridge. We're having a little birthday dinner for him before a big trip, and we need a notary for some travel documents. Could you come by?" Ray laughed, a dry bark. "They built their whole future on burning you out of that house," he said. Wet till they find out it was never theirs to claim. Linda's gaze hardened. I told her I'd be honored to help, she said. I'll be there with my notary stamp and my best poker face. Our little stage will be set. The bugs will be rolling. When she tries to push you into signing away what she thinks you still own, I'll be sitting right there to witness every word. On my way home, my car's trunk felt heavier. While I was the doctor, as far as Carla knew, Ray and I stopped by the house first. He loitered at the end of the block with a trash bag, picking cans, making a show of arguing with a recycling bin. Carla, predictably, came storming out to yell at him for making the neighborhood look bad. Take your junk somewhere else, she shouted down the street, arms crossed. While her back was turned, I slipped in through the side door. I moved fast for a man my age. Marion's photo albums from the top shelf of the closet. My grandfather's pocket watch from the jewelry box. The army medal I kept in the sock drawer. 2 of my old hand planes from the workshop, tools that still fit my hand like they'd been made for it. I packed them into the trunk, one layer, then another, wrapping glass in towels. By the time Carla stomped back in, still muttering about vagrants, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a grocery circular in front of me, glasses low on my nose. Thought I heard you shout, I said mildly. Some bum going through our trash, she said. I swear, this street is going downhill. Our trash. Our street. For now. Patel wants to see me this afternoon. I told her a little later as I put on my coat. Make sure I'm fit to travel. Might be gone a couple hours. She pursed her lips. You should have told me sooner, she said. I'd have called to confirm. Fine. Don't drive yourself if you feel dizzy. I'll be careful, I promised. On my way out, I brushed my hand over the doorframe Marion had marked with Derek's height years ago. The pencil lines were faint now, almost lost under new coats of paint, but I could still feel the little ridges where her hand had pressed too hard. That night, in Linda's office again, we went over the plan one more time. Ray sat with a legal pad, jotting notes like he was back on a case. They'll want you compliant, Linda said, soft, maybe a little confused. Let them think you're tired. When Carla brings out the documents, she mentioned a medical directive and something about helping with finances on the phone. I'll watch. I won't give legal advice unless you ask me, but I'll note everything. The pressure, the misrepresentations, the fact that they're having you sign things at a birthday party instead of in my office. And the house? I asked. Closing's tomorrow. First thing in the morning, she said. Funds will clear by midday. By the time you cut that cake, legally you'll be a tenant, not an owner. And they won't even know. Ray grinned, teeth flashing. Nothing like watching someone try to steal what they already lost, he said. When I finally pulled into my driveway well after dark, the house glowed warm from the windows. From the outside, it looked like any other cozy home on a winter night. Inside, I knew the walls were lined with plans to erase me. Carla met me at the door, arms folded. You were gone forever, she complained. You don't think we worry. You and your stubborn independence. Doctor was running behind, I said, shrugging out of my coat. Said I'm boringly healthy for my age. Good. Derek muttered from the couch without looking up. It'd really suck if you died before the trip after all this. Carla shot him a warning look, but he just shrugged. We're doing a little dinner tomorrow night, she announced, smoothing her hair. For your birthday, before we hit the road. Just the 3 of us. Well, 4. I invited that lawyer you like, Miss Park. Since she's a notary, she can witness some travel papers. You know, to make things easier. I forced my face to stay pleasantly blank. Is that so? I said. How thoughtful. That's what family does, she said, smiling. We take care of each other. Later. In my narrow back room, I lay on the bed and listened to the familiar creaks as the house settled around me. Every board, every pipe had its own voice after all these years. I could tell where someone was walking by the sound of the floor under their feet. This time, I knew the house didn't belong to me anymore. On some server downtown, a clerk would soon stamp a digital record that said so. But lying there, I realized something strange. For the first time in a long time. The knowledge didn't crush me. It steadied me. I turned my head to the nightstand, to the framed photo of Marion in her garden hat, squinting into the sun, cheeks smudged with dirt. Tomorrow, I whispered to her. Tomorrow I'll let them show the world who they are. Then I'm walking out that door for good. The house groaned softly in the dark, as if in agreement. They went all out for my 73rd birthday. The good tablecloth was on the dining table, the one Marion used to iron until every crease lined up like parade soldiers. The china we only took out on holidays gleamed under the overhead light. Carla had even lit the tall candles she usually complained were too fussy. "Look at this spread," she said, beaming a little too hard as she set down the roast. "Only the best for the guest of honor." Derek hovered behind her with a bottle of wine, his shirt actually tucked in for once. He kept shifting his weight from foot to foot like his shoes hurt. I took my seat at the end of the table, where Marion used to sit so she could look out at the yard while she ate. Tonight the curtains were drawn tight, shutting out the world. The room felt smaller than I remembered, the walls leaning in. "Miss Park," Carla trilled, her voice going up a whole octave as the doorbell rang. Right on time. Linda came in a moment later, briefcase in hand, wearing a dark blazer and that calm lawyer mask that didn't give anything away. She shook my hand like we were meeting at a church social. "Happy birthday, Mr. Whittaker," she said. "Thank you for inviting me." "Oh, we're the ones who are grateful," Carla gushed. "It's so kind of you to come notarize a few boring papers on your own time." Linda smiled politely. "Happy to witness signatures," she said. "I'm here as a notary tonight, not as legal counsel." That last part was for the record. The little mic under the table blinked silently in my imagination. We went through the motions. Carla brought out salad, then the roast, then a dish of potatoes swimming in butter. She kept my wine glass brimming, leaning over to top it off every time it dipped below halfway. "You have to celebrate," she scolded when I tried to put my hand over it. "We're heading to Missouri in a few days. New chapter." I lifted the glass, let the rim touch my lips, and tilted it just enough to wet my mouth. When their attention shifted to Linda, I let my hand drift toward the big potted plant by the sideboard, tipping the rest into the soil. The fern wouldn't mind, might even like the fertilizer. Conversation skated along the surface. Carla asked Linda about her busy practice. Dropped hints about all the legal red tape with inheritances these days. Derek chimed in with a story about a coworker who'd lost everything because his grandpa didn't put his affairs in order. "Wouldn't want that to happen to us," Carla said, laughing too loudly. "We're so lucky Elliot has us to help." "Lucky," I echoed, stabbing a piece of carrot. When the plates were finally cleared, Carla came back from the kitchen not with cake, but with a thick manila folder hugged to her chest. My gut tightened. "Okay," she said brightly, taking her seat again. "Before we get to dessert, let's take advantage of having a professional here." She slid the folder onto the table and opened it with a little flourish. Inside was a neat stack of documents, paper clips winking in the candlelight. "This won't take long," she said, pulling out the first set of pages. "Just routine things, Elliot. The Missouri lawyers said it's smart at your age." She pushed the top document toward me. "This one is a financial power of attorney," she said in her best casual tone. "It just says Derek and I can help manage your accounts while we sort out the inheritance. Pay your bills, talk to the bank, that kind of thing. Very standard." The next one she laid beside it. "And this is a medical power of attorney with some preferences clearly stated. You know, in case anything happens on the trip. Do not resuscitate language, but only if your quality of life is gone." She smiled. "You always said you didn't want to be kept alive by machines." The third packet was thicker, with a cover page that read Admiedar Famanil Tiarusta Agrominin. "And this," she said, tapping it affectionately, "is a family trust. It transfers the house and the Missouri money into a structure Derek and I can manage efficiently, for tax purposes. Keeps everything in the family," the Missouri lawyers insisted. "Linda can notarize your signature so it's all extra legit." She glanced at Linda. "Right?" Linda folded her hands, playing her role. "As I said earlier, I'm here to witness signatures," she said. "I can confirm identities and watch you sign, Mr. Whittaker. But I can't give you legal advice on these documents tonight. That would require a formal engagement and review." Carla's smile tightened for a second, but she smoothed it out. "Nothing complicated," she said, sliding a pen toward me. "Just sign at the flags, Elliot." It'll give all of us peace of mind. We don't have time for you to drag your feet. The trip is in 3 days. I picked up the first document, pulling my reading glasses from my pocket with hands that I made sure shook a little. I held the pages too close, lips moving as if I were sounding out the words. The letters swam in front of me, but I'd already seen enough in Linda's office to know exactly what kind of trap this was. Full authority. All accounts. Right to sell, encumber, transfer. Authority to withhold and withdraw medical treatment. Family trust in which I was grantor, but not truly beneficiary anymore. I let the silence stretch, the tick of the old clock on the wall getting louder. "What do you think, son?" I asked finally, looking up at Derek. "You think I should sign?" He froze like a deer in headlights. For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, guilt, the memory of a basement full of gas. Under the table, Carla's foot shot out. He jolted. It's for the best, Grandpa," he stammered. "We'll take care of everything. You don't need to worry about the fine print." Carla's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the table. "Please, just sign," she said, her voice losing some of its sugary coating. "We don't have time for your second thoughts. You disappear to ERs without telling us, you lose paperwork, you forget conversations. We're trying to protect you from yourself." My hand closed around the pen. I lifted it, made my wrist wobble so the tip scratched at the margin of the paper. I heard my own breath, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the blood whooshing in my ears. Then I let the pen fall. It hit the paper with a little clack and rolled, leaving a tiny ink smudge like a period at the end of a sentence. "No," I said. The word came out clear and strong, from somewhere in my chest that hadn't spoken up in a long time. Carla stared at me as if I'd slapped her. "What do you mean, no?" she snapped. "After everything we've done for you." I pushed my chair back and stood. My knees protested, but anger steadied me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded copies of the insurance beneficiary change, the redeemed savings certificate, the loan statement with its red threats. I smoothed them out on the table, right on top of her tidy stack. "You've done plenty," I said. "You stole my wife's savings. You forged my signature to make yourselves my heirs. You took loans against my house. And last week, you tried to kill me with gas in my own basement." Derek made a strangled sound. "You were supposed to be asleep." "I mean, Derek?" Carla hissed, eyes wide. Linda's hand went to her briefcase. She opened it calmly and pulled out a tablet, setting it on the table and tapping the screen. A familiar hum and a burst of static filled the room. Then my kitchen came out of the tiny speakers. "Jazleek, old man, sleeping pills," Carla's recorded voice said, clear and cold. "Insurance investigators seen it 100 times." The color drained from her face. On the tablet, Derek asked, "Tinny, what if the investigators look too closely?" Then her voice again. "You think they'll believe your senile grandpa over a grieving widow and her hardworking son?" Linda swiped to another file. The more recent kitchen talk came through her saying, "As soon as that check clears, he's going to a care home." Derek suggesting, "Nature taking its course with a little help." Carla musing about, "One last peaceful night at home with a very strong tea." Carla slammed her fist on the table. The candles trembled. "These are fake," she spat. "You doctored them. That drunk you hang around probably spliced my voice. This is harassment." "Ray," I called, turning toward the hallway. "You can come in now." For a heartbeat no one moved. Then footsteps sounded in the hall. Ray appeared in the doorway, hair combed, beard trimmed, wearing a thrift store blazer that almost fit. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers stepped into view, hands resting on their duty belts. "What is this?" Carla demanded, half rising from her chair. "You can't just bring strangers into our house." "Mum," the taller officer said, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "I'm Officer Jensen with the county sheriff's office. This is Officer Morales. We have a warrant based on filings from Ms. Park here, Mr. Whitaker's sworn affidavit, and corroborating recordings provided by Mr. Ray Collins." He nodded toward Ray, whose last name I'd never heard until that moment. "We're here regarding allegations of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted elder abuse, fraud, and forgery," he continued. "We need you to remain seated while we explain your rights." Carla's eyes darted between the officers, Linda, the tablet, and me. Something in her snapped. She lunged across the table, snatching up the pen I dropped, and shoved it toward my chest. "Just sign the damn thing," she screamed. "You owe us? After everything we've sacrificed, you can't do this to us." Her hand jammed the pen into my fingers hard enough to hurt. Reflex made me close my fist. But instead of letting her guide it to the paper, I grabbed her wrist. For a woman half my age, her bones felt tiny in my grip. "The only thing I owe you," I said, my voice steady, "is the truth." I let go. She yanked her arm back, cradling it, more shocked than injured. I turned to Derek. He sank back into his chair, eyes huge and wet. "You picked up that wrench," I said. "You opened that gas line. You poured that trail. You knew what you were doing." Tears spilled over. He slid off his chair onto his knees, hands open like a supplicant. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. She made me. She kept saying they'd take my fingers, that they'd kill us both. I didn't wanna, I swear I didn't." "You always had a choice," I said. "You chose money over my life." Linda closed the tablet and folded her hands. "This," she said quietly, looking at Carla, "is what the law calls undue influence and attempted homicide. It's over." Officer Jensen stepped forward. "Carla Whitaker," he said, voice shifting into that formal cadence, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent." As he recited the rights, Officer Morales moved behind her, producing a pair of handcuffs. Carla jerked away. "You can't do this," she spat. "He's confused. He's old." "I was just trying to protect our family." "Our family," I repeated softly. "My family died the night you chose money over my life." Morales caught her wrists and brought them together. The cuffs clicked shut. She exploded then, screaming every insult she could grab from the air. "You're killing your own family!" she shrieked at me as they pulled her toward the door. "You ungrateful old bastard! After all we did for you, this is how you repay us. You'll die alone in some hole, you hear me? Alone!" Her voice echoed down the hall, then was cut off as the front door opened and closed. The house seemed to breathe out. Officer Jensen turned to Derek, who was still on his knees among the scattered papers. "We'll need you to come down to the station for questioning," he said. "There may be charges related to the incident in the basement and the financial documents. For now, stay seated." Linda gathered the unsigned POAs and trust agreement into a tidy pile, careful not to mix them with the forged forms I'd laid out. "By the way," she said to Derek, her tone almost conversational, "that house you and your mother were trying to put into this family trust, it no longer belongs to Mr. Whitaker. It was sold yesterday. Legally, you're tenants at sufferance now, which means you have no right to be here beyond what the new owner tolerates." His head jerked up. "Sold," he croaked. You can't sell what's supposed to be mine." "It was never yours," I said. He crawled forward on his knees, papers crumpling under his palms, and grabbed at the hem of my pants. "Please, Grandpa," he whispered, voice raw. "Help me. Don't let them take me too. I'm all you have left." I looked down at him, my grandson, the boy who used to stand in my workshop doorway with sawdust in his hair, now kneeling in a litter of lies he'd helped spread. My face hardened. "We'll talk about what I told him later." Right then, all I did was gently shake his hand off my leg and take a step back. It's strange how quickly a nightmare can turn into paperwork. A few weeks after that birthday dinner, I sat in Linda's office one last time while she flipped through a final stack of documents, eyes darting, pen tapping here and there. "Carla's attorney tried to get her out on a reduced bond," she said, not looking up. Judge wasn't impressed. "Between the recordings, the forged forms, and the attempted gas incident, the DA is feeling very confident. She's in county awaiting trial. They're talking plea offers, but either way, she's not walking away from this." I nodded. I pictured her in an orange jumpsuit, mascara gone, no candles on the table. It didn't make me happy, exactly. It just felt fitting. "And Derek?" I asked. She sighed. "He took a deal," she said. "Guilty to fraud and financial exploitation, cooperation on the homicide conspiracy, probation, restitution, mandatory counseling. He's in a halfway program now, working off some of the debt. They're keeping a close eye on him." My chest gave that familiar squeeze. I'd lost my son in a fall at the plant years ago. That night with the gas, I lost my grandson in another kind of accident. One of character, not machinery. I lost a son that night, I said quietly. But I gained back my self-respect. And I gained a friend who grabbed my arm and told me the truth. Linda finally looked up and smiled, small but real. Ray's doing well, she said as if she'd read my mind. He's my part-time investigator now. Turns out he still has quite an eye. One of my insurance cases has never moved so fast. I'd seen it myself. The first time I visited the rooming house where he was staying, he opened the door in a clean shirt, the smell of stale booze gone, case files spread on his little table like old companions. Funny, he joked. I used to go undercover. Now I don't need a disguise. Everyone just assumes I'm nobody. Back in Linda's office, she slid a thin folder toward me. These are the final trust amendments, she said. They make explicit that no one related to you by blood or marriage who has attempted to harm you can benefit from your estate. And the assets are all in vehicles with my firm overseeing disbursements. No one can ever do this to you again, Mr. Whitaker. Call me Elliot, I said, signing the last line. Seems you've earned it. She laughed softly. Then you call me Linda, she replied. And try to enjoy what's left of your retirement, Elliot. Preferably somewhere far away from gas leaks and forged signatures. I took her advice. A week later, I stood on the opposite sidewalk from my old house, hands in my coat pockets, watching a little boy ride a scooter down the driveway. A minivan sat where Derek's car used to be. Someone had repainted the trim, a fresh, clean white. There were chalk drawings on the walkway, flowers, suns, some lopsided creature with too many legs. A woman came out onto the porch, called, "Dinner." The boy groaned, spun his scooter in a sloppy circle, and zipped inside. The door closed. For a moment, the house sat there, solid and quiet, but it didn't feel like it was looking at me anymore. It was looking at them. That house needed laughter again, I murmured. It wasn't going to get it with us. I turned away before anyone could spot the old man loitering on the curb. My van was parked around the corner. Nothing fancy. Just a small used RV that smelled faintly of previous vacations. The kind retirees buy when they decide to see the Grand Canyon before their knees give out completely. Trust income paid the insurance and gas. The rest was on me to handle with the same stubborn frugality that built the Maple House brick by brick. I met Derek one more time before I left town. We sat at a corner table in a church basement after a support group meeting he'd been ordered to attend. Fluorescent lights, burnt coffee, folding chairs. Not the setting I'd have chosen for a goodbye, but maybe the right one. He looked smaller without the swagger, shoulders hunched, hands worrying a styrofoam cup. I am sorry, he said, eyes fixed on the table. Not just because I got caught. I don't know when I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as numbers on a screen. At about 80,000 in the hole, I'd guess, I said. My tone was dry, but I didn't spit it at him. He flinched. I was scared. He went on. Mum, she always had a plan. I thought if I just did what she said, we'd be okay. That doesn't excuse it. I don't know how to make this right. I watched him for a long moment. The lines of his face were still my son's in certain angles. That hurt. You can't make it right, I said. Not with me. What you can do is build something better than this going forward. Pay back what you can. Stay away from get-rich-quick garbage. Learn to stand up when anyone tells you the plan is killing people. He swallowed. So you forgive me? He asked, voice cracking. I thought about it. About the gas. The forged forms. His hand on my pant leg. His cries in the dining room. I forgive you, I said slowly, tasting the words. For my own sake. I don't want to carry you around like a stone in my chest. But I can't trust you. Not with my life, not with my home, not with my heart. You'll have to build your own life from here, Derek. Without my house as a safety net and without the idea of my death as a solution. He nodded, tears tracking down his cheeks. I left him there, surrounded by pamphlets and bad coffee, and for the first time in months, when I stepped outside, the air felt light. Now, as I tell you this, I'm sitting in the driver's seat of that little RV. The dash clock glows softly. Out the front window, a lake lies flat and dark, catching the last smear of pink from the sunset. Somewhere out there, ducks mutter to each other, settling in. Ray is in the passenger seat, head tilted back, snoring lightly with a book open on his chest. It's a mystery novel. He tells me it's professional development. We've driven through 3 states in the last month, stopping in small towns where nobody knows my name unless I want them to. I park near rivers and under big skies. Some mornings I fish. Some afternoons I sit and listen to the radio and drink coffee that isn't poisoned. This whole ordeal taught me that the most dangerous kind of greed is the kind that dresses itself up as family duty. People who truly love you don't make plans for your death. They make plans to sit with you at the table a little longer. Blood is just biology. Loyalty is a choice. And when that choice is made against you, you have every right to choose yourself instead. Sometimes strangers who see your humanity are more family than kin who see only dollar signs. Ray, with his milk crate thrown and his beat-up flip phone, did more to keep me alive than the people eating at my table. Linda, bound by ethics and law, fought harder for my safety than my own grandson did. It takes courage to put your dignity above appearances. To say no, when everyone expects you to smile and sign. To walk away from a house you built because the people inside it would rather inherit it than share it. So I want to ask you something. If you discovered your own child or grandchild was trying to control your money, or your life, the way Carla and Derek did, would you take legal action against them, even if it meant cutting them off completely? Would you be willing to stand alone rather than stay where you're only valued as a payout? And have you ever felt that someone was only kind to you, or to an older relative, because they were waiting for an inheritance or access to property? What did you do about it? Did you speak up? Did you stay quiet and hope you were wrong? If you found something in my story that hit close to home, please hit that like button so more people can hear it. Subscribe for more stories about elders who refuse to be treated like a payday. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your stories, your warnings, might be the thing that saves someone else's life. I don't know exactly where I'm headed next. Maybe south, where the winters are kinder. Maybe west, to see mountains I've only ever watched on TV. But I know one thing for certain. I'll never again live in a house where I have to fear who's sitting across the dinner table. I turn the key. The engine rumbles awake. Ray snorts himself out of his nap, blinking at me. On the move again, El? He asks. Yeah, I say, easing us onto the road. Let's drive.